Hello, this is Steve from ObjectRiver. Today we're going to show you ObjectRiver's integration of Node and Docker. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one of ObjectRiver's samples with IntelliJ. We'll go to our ObjectRiver samples directory. We're going to run the nested example that has a little complexity to it. So we've opened IntelliJ. The reason I'm showing you IntelliJ is for two reasons. First, our Docker integration is in IntelliJ. And secondly, our CloudCompiler does not currently run in WebStorm, but we'll get over to WebStorm. And we're working on that compiler for that environment. If I open the nested model, pretty much our model has enumerations. We're defining three beans for time, date, timestamp, etc. And we have two web services here. And our web services are pretty much modeled by JAX-RS annotations. So here we have two web services, nested 1 and nested 2, and they're passing beans and returning either lists or a bean in this example. Now we'll go and we're going to configure the ObjectRiver CloudCompiler, which is a plugin that runs in IntelliJ. We're going to generate Node code. So we're going to go to this pull down here and we're going to say we're going to pick JavaScript Node.js. We're going to generate client and server. We're going to select the model that you just looked at. Add an email. And select the IntelliJ module. We're going to remove the build. This just says build the system before we run the compiler. We don't need that. We say OK. It's that easy. We've configured the CloudCompiler. So now we're going to execute it. So right now it's contacting AWS and it's running the CloudCompiler. And it's generating a bunch of JavaScript code, client and server. Adding it to just two different directories here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this Ant window. Ant is a build facility within Java. This is how we're integrating Docker right now. So if I go to the nested directory, I'll go to the server, because that's where we're going to load this build node server Ant script. So here what you're seeing is the ability to build the server into a Docker image. So I'm going to run that. So right now it's creating an image of the Docker server. So that just ran. If I look at the messages, you can see it has this, it's executing this Docker create image. And now I'm going to run the nested server in Docker. So that's running in Docker. If I go to a terminal window, let's look at what we just created. If I go to Tools, Windows, Terminal, and I say Docker Images, now we can see the images right here. This is the nested node server image. If I say Docker PS, this is a way of running. When you take your image and you run it in Docker, it's running as a Docker container. And so now you're seeing that this is running in the Docker container. So now let's go over to WebStorm. So I'm going to go over to WebStorm and I'm going to create a new project. So right now what we've done is we've generated client and server projects. So here we have the server. Let's look at some of this generated code. This is a generated web service for the nested 1 web service. And what we're doing here is we're just returning randomly generated data. So this is sending this random generated answer typically what we do is we mock the client and server so you can run this right out of the box without any programming. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to another terminal window inside WebStorm. So I'm in the server, and I'm going to go npm install. What this is going to do is this is going to install the additional components needed to run our server in Node. I'm going to actually go back over to the client and do the same thing since we have two projects here. Let's open another project within WebStorm. We're going to open the client side. So what we've done is we've created separate projects, client and server. I'm going to go to ObjectRiver, samples directory. I'm going to go into our nested example. I'm going to go node client. So we're going to open this project. It says it's not empty. You want to create it from existing. We'll create a new window. So now we have the client here, and we generate a main program to run. I'm going to run this client. If you look at it, all it's doing is creating the data randomly, and it's making a call to those web service functions. So we'll run this. Now that just ran. Now the server is running in Docker. It's not running in the other Node WebStorm project yet. If I go to the terminal, let's say Docker PS. So there's our server running. If I say Docker logs nested server, we'll see output on that server. So you can see there was output on that server. Let's say Docker PS. I'm going to stop that server now. So I'm going to say Docker stop nested server. Paste. That is now stopping the nested server in Docker. Takes a second. If I say Docker PS. Okay, that's not running. So now I'm going to go over to our server, and I'm going to run it here. So I'm going to say Docker server run. So now I'm running our server in WebStorm directly in Node.js and WebStorm. Back over to our client. We'll run it again. And we ran it here. Let's see if the server logged. And the server logged what it saw here. So what you've seen is we took an ObjectRiver example, we configured the CloudCompiler, we generated client and server, we created a Docker server, then we went into WebStorm, we created two projects from the client server, generated directories, and we ran the client toward the Docker server, then we stopped it. Then we went over to the server WebStorm, started it, ran the client again. And so what you've seen is the client run twice against a Docker server backend and the Node.js running natively in WebStorm. So that's it. Thank you.